Hi, this is Carrie Margaret from Love Notes. And tonight I'm going to do a love note on Harriet Lerner's The Dance of Anger. Now, this was I found out about this book a long time ago and I had no desire to read it because anger is not an emotion that I really acknowledged or thought that it was acceptable to express. That's something that's pretty common in recovering codependent pleasers like myself. And and once I finally dug in to the dance of anger, it was amazing because it's really about being in touch with yourself and taking anger as a sign that a boundary has been violated or that you need to do something, and using it as a way to have a kind conversation. So the book isn't the book isn't necessarily about accepting anger as much as, which it's important to accept all of our emotions. Not that it's easy, but it's important. Not that the book is really about accepting anger. It's more about using it as the sign that it is, that there's something going on that we have to pay attention to. I mean, it is, who is it that said this? I think heard this originally. Maybe it was Tony Robbins, that emotion should really move through your body in about 90 seconds. I've heard anywhere from 90 seconds to a few minutes, but a pure emotional state should move through your body fairly quickly. What happens is we have all these layered emotions, and then when emotions are suppressed, they become even more difficult to deal with. So when anger comes up, it can come up like a huge amount of anger because we haven't had the tools or resources to know how to respond to anger, and we have built up anger inside in our tissues that needs to be released. Anyways, once we get in the path of releasing our emotions and feeling more free, then anger can be our friend and actually can be a way that we both kind of honor ourselves, because in a relationship there's ourselves and the other. So honor ourselves and honor the relationship, as I'll dig into here. So this book really, for me, that I love to please still, and loving to please is fine as long as you're not doing it compulsively. If you do it thoughtfully, it's nice to be pleasing because you decide to, not because you have to, right? But in here, Harriet Lerner goes into really how we can use anger as a signal. And it can really be a relationship builder, which is, whoa, mind-blowing, and so good. And it can be kind. I think we can have real talks that involve the fact that we've felt anger and say it in a kind way. Pretty awesome stuff. So, first of all, Harriet Lerner goes into what are the common signs that that our anger is trying to tell us, that our emotion is trying to tell us, because our emotions try to tell us things. If we feel mixture of fear or anxiety, a lot of times it's because it's our body is saying that you need to take action. Now, more complicated, that's not always, sometimes you see something scary on the news and you don't actually need to take action about the thing on the news right now, but in your own life, when that comes up, a lot of times it's a call to action. Well, anger is a signal as well, and the really common signal is that there's been a boundary violated, or a value or a need that you have that's been violated. What's really interesting is anger can come up when we're doing more or giving more than we can comfortably give. Now, for the overgivers like myself and the overfunctioners and the over everythingers, that's a really big one that you have to watch out, because anger could mean that we are giving more than we can comfortably give. It can mean that our needs and wants aren't being met in a relationship. That over time usually shows up as a resentment. Like, I didn't even know that I felt anger. I'm not joking at all. And over time, kind of slowly built up resentment and then had to release all of that. And that's super fun times. Or, it could just come up as some kind of passive aggressive little thing here or there, or a blowout. What else can it mean? It can mean that something's not right, something's off. There's an issue that needs to be addressed. That too much of ourself is being compromised. This is an amazing one. Anger can come up because other people are doing too much for us. So it really gets into like the whole over-functioning, under-functioning dynamic that like codependents just love to get into. Like one person is over-functioning, the other person is under-functioning. Instead of having 50-50, we have like, an 80-20 going on. That can happen for lots of different reasons. And it's super common in any kind of like addict and codependent relationship, because addicts and codependents love to get together. Like they just love each other. Love. And addiction can be all different things too. It's interesting. Like addiction doesn't necessarily just mean alcohol or drugs. It could be like addiction to, very common addiction in our culture is to work. So the workaholic and the codependent love each other. Yeah, that's like a very, very popular and very acceptable addiction. Just like the addiction to news is a very popular and acceptable addiction. There's so many different types of addictions that show up in various different ways. So what else? Anger can be a sign that we're hurt. I think that our rights are being violated. So anger really serves to kind of preserve the integrity of ourselves, of ourself, and our self-ing. And when anger isn't felt constructively and expressed, where you allow yourself to feel it, to see what the sign is, and then to go and express it in a constructive, kind conversation using I words like, or making a request, a very kind and polite request, but tapping into that anger. When we don't have that toolkit, when we don't know how to do that, anger can come off as blame. It can come off in yelling. It can come off in emotionally distancing. It can come off in a lot of different ways, or like outbursts, tantrums, passive aggressive type of anger, when you give kind of a slide remark or roll of the eyes, that's eye rolling. Eye rolling used to be like, I didn't even know that I did it. For real. Not kidding. I didn't know. So much of this work of being in better relationship with ourselves and with others is just becoming conscious of the unconscious things and just loving ourselves through it, right? So, yeah. Anger can also show up as headaches, chronic migraines, or being less sexually responsive. So there, there can be dynamics in relationships where one partner has a headache, or one partner is less sexually responsive, and sometimes it comes from the anger of like not being able to self in the relationship, not being able to be in integrity with your own wants and needs. And what's really amazing about Harriet Lerner's approach to anger that I love so much, the pleaser in me just loves, is that she really recommends that you start to tap in and feel your anger and look for the message that, so when I'll like feel it kind of in my chest. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling angry. What's going on? What am I feeling angry about? And allowing that feeling to arise in your body, and like the awareness to find out like what the anger is, what it is, what's the sign. And once you know the sign, then you can think about whatever options you have and respond in the moment, but you can respond in a way that is thoughtful and kind to the other person. So sometimes we have to do this like in the moment, and that feels like a pressure situation for real, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it. And sometimes we have the opportunity to go back and reflect and really think about the kind of conversation that we want to have with somebody. And yeah, I mean, there's value in both. But the beautiful thing about going about these conversations is when we can go about the conversation in a way that is kind and calm and thoughtful and assertive of whatever it is that we are needing in that moment. Whatever it is, if it's a boundary that needs to be placed, if it is, really defining what our needs are. And sometimes in a relationship, like Harriet Lerner says in the book, our lack of clarity is, we'll come in and we'll feel anger and we don't even know exactly what we need. But instead of denying our feelings, the whole idea, and this is terrifying if we're codependent, like terrifying, whole idea of stepping into uncertainty and really thinking, who am I? What do I want? What do I deserve? What do I need in this situation? And just really getting tapped into that. Because the scary thing there is, you can say to somebody, I have this need, and, somebody might not meet you at that need, and then you can go and negotiate from there. One of the interesting things that she says in the book is it's not this whole thing of, in a relationship, one person going up and when they're being really skillful about a anger sign and saying, I have this particular need, that the other person is automatically going to accept it. You might need to go in and start to negotiate needs and see like where things can be met in different ways. But then it can be something that you're having a discussion, a healthy discussion about, versus this, a thing where things you kind of blow up or create blame or create stories, or really the hardest thing, and this was a really challenging thing as I recovered and learned a lot about myself after separating from the father of my children, is I had to really that whole come to Jesus moment where I realized there were moments during our relationship where I would say things to him that would really come off as like attack on character, like you always do this thing, whatever, or you always do the other thing. And whenever you speak to somebody in that type of language, so I'm not going to use him at an example. I don't use people that have shared their heart with me on examples on YouTube. But let's just think of a fictional example. Somebody, a couple that's in an argument, like you're always late and inconsiderate. Okay, late and inconsiderate it's an attack on character. Like, why won't you tell me the truth about this? Is an attack on somebody's integrity, and it feels terrible to be on the other side of that. That's something that I had to do kind of, a lot of reflection on and self-forgiveness, and actually ask forgiveness to my ex-husband about, because I didn't even realize that I was doing it. And when we can use anger as a useful skill, Let's just say the example of somebody being late. If somebody's late, and we can say, I really feel nervous when we go to events late, and it makes me feel more relaxed when you go on time, and I'd like to see how we can negotiate that. That's a really different way to respond to anger than you're always late and inconsiderate, which is just an attack on character. See the difference between the kinder sort of I language and then the attack on character that comes from using things like you language. And yeah, what I really loved about this, the whole book, and I'd highly recommend that you read it, is it really went over, skills related to feeling anger, acknowledging it, and then using it as something to bring clarity to a relationship, and then that brings more closeness. I mean, when anger is done in an effective way, that causes distance. But when anger is used in an effective way, it can cause more closeness and more intimacy, which is really so much of us. That's what we want, is more intimate and deeply connected, loving relationships. So check out Harriet Lerner's Dance of Anger. It's really worth your time. This is Carrie Margaret from Love Notes. You can check me out at carriemargaret.com and subscribe if this brings value to your life. I hope you have an amazing day.